Inflation increased just a little bit in the month of May, but that's not really the story. The story is questions are now being raised about whether these numbers are even accurate. And that's not based on a conspiracy or speculation. It's based on this notice that the government agency that reports these numbers just posted last week. And yes, this does impact you. And before I get into that part, let me just tell you what the new May Consumer Price Index report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is showing. Inflation increased, as I said, just slightly between April and May of 2025 by 0.1%. It found between May of 2025 and May of 2024, inflation increased by 2.4%. Again, we are seeing large year-over-year decreases in gasoline. In May, it was down 12% compared to May of 2024. The biggest contributors to the increase in inflation were shelter, which was up again almost 4% year over year, food, which was up again almost 3% year over year, and natural gas, which was up more than 15% year over year. Okay, now let's get to this announcement made last week by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that's raising all these new questions. They announced that they are changing and cutting back on data collection nationwide. Now, as I've been reporting for years, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is the nonpartisan government agency that collects all kinds of data that the government uses to track employment, wages, prices, and inflation. That data is used by lawmakers to make laws, by the president to inform his policy decisions, and by private industry to make business decisions. Now, it's not uncommon for the BLS to change the methods they use to collect that data. They do it almost every year. But the changes are usually just like small tweaks. For example, in 2024, they changed the way they collected data for used cars and trucks, and they changed the way they collected data for medical care. You may also remember last year, a lot of people were peddling some conspiracy theory that the BLS was manipulating the entire Consumer Price Index report to benefit President Biden because they were removing coffee from the report. At the time, coffee was really expensive. Of course, that was not true at all. The BLS never removed coffee from the index. They just moved away from categorizing specific package sizing when they were collecting coffee data. Coffee is still very much part of the CPI report. For the record, in May of 2025, coffee increased year over year by 11.5%. But the change the BLS is making now is not just a small tweak. This is different. In this 4-sentence announcement, the BLS said it is reducing sample in areas across the country. In April, they specifically suspended CPI data collection entirely in Lincoln, Nebraska, and Provo, Utah. In June, they suspended collection entirely in Buffalo, New York. The statement goes on to say that these nationwide reductions and specific suspensions will have a minimal impact on the overall all-item CPI index, but may increase the volatility of subnational or item-specific indexes. The hell does that mean? It means that the BLS is cutting back on the number of businesses where it checks prices and is using less precise methods for certain items when calculating the month-by-month change in price, which gives us an indication of whether inflation is up or down. And why is the BLS cutting back and using these less precise methods? According to the statement, because BLS makes reductions when current resources can no longer support the collection effort. That's a fancy way of saying staffing and budget cuts. Of course, President Trump and DOJ and now Congress have been on a mission to freeze federal hiring of new staff and have been laying off current federal staff. And obviously, those staffing and budget cuts have impacted the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But why does any of that matter? Why should you even care? Well, specifically because this report is the one that the government uses to determine how much or how little your Social Security cost of living increase will be. It's also used to determine federal tax brackets. And it's one of the reports the Federal Reserve uses to determine whether to increase or cut your interest rates. So if the numbers are not completely accurate or the data quality is questionable, even for little things here or there, those numbers may not really reflect what's actually going on with the U.S. economy, and the people in charge may be making decisions based on that questionable data. Now, does this mean you should completely discount the BLS or any of the reports it produces? Absolutely not. These reports are still being produced, and they are still the ones that the government and Federal Reserve and businesses rely on. So you still should be paying attention to them.